I'm 20, finishing my sophomore year at a state school 3 hours away, and I'd come back to my hometown for the summer, mostly to save money and pick up shifts at the library where I used to volunteer in high school. I want to say up front, I'm not a jumpy person. My roommate calls me concrete because nothing rattles me, not horror movies, not thunderstorms, not even the time our smoke detector went off at 2 a.m. for no reason, and I just unplugged it and went back to sleep. I'm telling you that so you understand this isn't me overreacting to a guy being a little weird. This was something else. There's a coffee shop on the corner of 5th and Main, family run, the kind of place that still uses a chalkboard menu and a tip jar shaped like a dog. I'd been going there since I was 16. Vanilla latte, a muffin for me, and usually a couple of extra pastries for my younger brother Caleb, who's 14 and would live on banana bread if I let him. The owners, an older couple named Denise and Walt, knew my order before I said it. It was routine. Boring, even. I liked that about it. A new guy started working there in May. Early 20s, thin, the kind of nervous energy where his eyes moved a half second before the rest of him did. I came in on a Tuesday around 9, ordered my usual, and went to pay. My cash, I still carry cash for some reason, a habit from my dad, slipped out of my hand and went everywhere across the floor. Classic me. Before I could even bend down, this guy had vaulted the little side gate of the counter to help me pick it up. While he was gathering bills, he had his sleeve right up, and I saw a long scar on his wrist, jagged, old. I said thanks, more than I needed to, because I felt bad he'd jumped over a counter for some loose ones and fives. He didn't say no problem or anything normal. He just looked at me. Really looked, blinking slow like he was committing my face to memory, and asked, "Are you a regular here?" I told him, yeah, I lived a few blocks over, grabbed my coffee, and left. I remember the back of my neck prickling on the walk to my car, the kind of feeling you get when you think someone's watching you cross a parking lot. I told myself I was being weird about a guy who was just bad at customer service. That night I was lying in bed scrolling Instagram. My account's private, locked to people I actually know, maybe 90 followers, mostly friends from high school and college. I got a follow request from an account called Coffee Guy 99. No bio, 3 posts, all coffee-related stock photos. I didn't accept it, but I tapped through to look, and the profile picture was him. The guy from that morning. I hadn't told him my name. I definitely hadn't told him my handle, which isn't even close to my real name. I blocked it and told myself maybe he'd seen my card when I paid, found me through a mutual friend, whatever. There are explanations for things. I went to sleep telling myself that. Around 11 the next morning, I got a DM from a totally different account. No profile picture, handle just a string of numbers. It said, "I saw you walk away yesterday. You forgot your loyalty card." That stopped me cold for a second, because my car had been parked 2 blocks down the street, behind the hardware store, not visible from the coffee shop at all. There was no way to see me walk away unless you'd followed me out the door and down the block. I blocked that account too and didn't tell anyone because what was I going to say? A barista creeped me out, and now a stranger online knows where I parked? It sounded insane even in my head. I want to be honest, this is the part where I made the first dumb decision. Instead of telling my parents or Caleb, I just stopped going to that coffee shop. I figured if I removed myself from wherever he was, the problem went away. I didn't think about the fact that he might already know more than just my route to a coffee shop. It didn't go away. I picked up my library shifts that week. I worked the circulation desk 3 days a week, nothing exciting, mostly checking out paperbacks to retirees and running summer reading programs for kids. Wednesday afternoon, on my 15-minute break, my phone buzzed. New account. "I like your sweater today." I was wearing a gray cardigan I'd put on that morning without thinking twice about it. Thursday. "Why do you hide from me?" I started getting these multiple times a shift, always from accounts with no followers, no posts, created that same day. I'd block one and another would message within the hour. During one Friday shift, I counted 61 notifications by the time I clocked out. Comments showing up on photos I'd posted 3 years ago, things nobody scrolls back that far to find. He started critiquing things, my friends and old photos, what I'd worn to a wedding, who I'd been dating. It stopped feeling like a crush and started feeling like surveillance. I told myself, and I know how this sounds now, that as long as he stayed online, it was manageable. Annoying, creepy, but manageable. That was decision number 2, and it was worse than the first one, because it meant I waited almost 2 weeks before I told anyone, including my own brother, who shares a house with me, for 3 more months. The night it stopped being online, I left the library at 8 p.m., same as always. The lot behind the building isn't well lit. There's one sodium light that's been flickering since I was in high school, and the library's never bothered fixing it. I had my keys laced through my fingers, which is a habit my mom taught me, more out of general caution than because I thought I needed it that night. I was maybe 10 feet from my car when something moved near the dumpster enclosure to my left. A tall, thin shape just standing there, not moving toward me, just standing, watching. I didn't wait to find out who it was. I got in, locked the doors, and pulled out of that lot probably faster than I should have. I got home, pulled into the garage, and went straight inside, deadbolt thrown, chain on, which we never use. I sat on the couch with the lights on and tried to convince myself it had been a guy taking out trash, a maintenance worker, anybody. At 9:14 p.m., my phone buzzed. A photo. My sedan, parked in that exact lot, taken from an angle that put the photographer behind and to the left of where I'd parked, basically where the dumpsters were. Caption, "You walk fast, but I can keep up." I hadn't posted anywhere that I was leaving work, hadn't posted my location all week. He'd been there, physically. Not guessing, not scrolling old photos, standing in a dark parking lot watching me get into my car, and then taking the time to photograph it afterward. I called Caleb into the living room and showed him, and to his credit, he didn't make me feel stupid for sitting on this for 2 weeks. He stayed with me on the couch that night with a baseball bat leaned against the armrest, which felt almost funny and also exactly right. I didn't sleep. Every creak in the house, and our house creaks a lot, it's almost 90 years old, sounded like someone testing the front door. The next morning, I filed a report with our local PD. The officer who took it was polite, wrote everything down, asked good questions, but was honest with me that without a name attached to any of the accounts and without him having physically touched me or broken in anywhere, there wasn't much they could actively do beyond keeping a record on file. He did say that if I had a name, even a first name, that would help, something to cross-reference. I didn't have one. The guy from the coffee shop, the only physical anchor I had to any of this, had a name tag that day, I remember, but I genuinely cannot recall what it said. I've tried. I've gone back to that memory probably 50 times since, trying to read a name tag I glanced at for 2 seconds while picking cash up off the floor. Denise, the coffee shop owner, told me later that the new hire had quit without notice the same week all this started. No forwarding info, nothing. Walt said he'd seemed like a nice enough kid, quiet, a little intense maybe, paid in cash for his training shifts because he didn't have a bank account set up yet. That was the last anyone at that shop ever heard of him. The messages didn't stop completely. They just slowed. Maybe one every few days instead of dozens. I deleted every social media account I had except one locked profile I used to talk to my mom. Caleb walks me to my car now if I'm getting off after dark, even though he's 14 and a head shorter than me, and I'd never admit to him how much better that makes me feel. I'm moving 3 states away for a job in August, somewhere I haven't told anyone about online. I keep telling myself that's far enough. I keep telling myself a lot of things. I still don't know his real name, and some nights that bothers me more than the photo of my car ever did. That somewhere out there is a person who knows what sweater I wore on a random Wednesday, and I don't even know what to call him. Winter of 2020, I was 23, finishing my last semester of grad school remotely because of everything going on that year. And I lived with my parents in a suburb outside the city, the kind of place where the lots are big enough that you can't see your neighbor's porch light from your own. There's exactly one road in and out of our development. At the mouth of that road, right where it meets the main highway, there's a bus stop with a bench and an old sodium street lamp that's flickered for as long as I can remember. The township's put in 3 work orders to fix it, and somehow it never sticks. I'm including all this because I want you to understand the geography, because the geography is the whole reason any of this scared me as much as it did. I should say up front that I'm not someone who gets spooked easily. I grew up watching horror movies with my dad. I've done the whole haunted house tour on Halloween thing without flinching. And my study partner Priya used to tease me for falling asleep during scary parts of movies because I just don't have the wiring for it. I'm telling you this so you know that what happened that January wasn't me being jumpy about nothing. I'd been at Priya's apartment working on a research proposal that was due the next morning, and I didn't leave until almost 1:15 a.m. The drive home is maybe 20 minutes, mostly empty highway this late, and I remember being so tired that I had the radio off just so I could focus on staying awake. Around 1:30, I turned off the highway onto the road leading into our neighborhood, and that's when I saw someone sitting on the bench by the street lamp. It was maybe 28 degrees that night. Nobody sits outside at 1:30 a.m. in January unless something's wrong. And my first thought, genuinely, was that it might be someone who needed help. Broken down car, locked out, something like that. I slowed down a little as I passed. The person was wearing a long, dark coat, heavy, almost like an old-fashioned trench coat, and they were sitting completely upright, hands in their lap, not moving at all, not shivering, not hunched against the cold the way a person actually would be. I told myself maybe they were waiting for a rideshare. I checked my mirror out of habit more than anything as I went by, and that's when the first real wrongness hit me. The head had turned. Not toward the road, the way you'd glance at a passing car, toward me, specifically, tracking my taillights. Then, in the mirror, I watched them stand. The movement wasn't normal. It was slow, almost segmented, like someone standing up after their legs had fallen asleep, except worse, like the joints weren't quite working together. And then they started walking, in my direction. I turned onto my street, and I want to be honest that the only thing keeping me calm at that point was telling myself I was overtired and reading into nothing. But I didn't pull all the way into the garage. I pulled into the driveway and just sat there, engine running, watching the end of the street in my mirror. About a minute later, and I counted because I was staring at the dashboard clock the whole time, a shape passed across the mouth of the street, moving at a walking pace, not stopping, not looking toward my house. I don't know why that was somehow worse than if it had stopped. I waited maybe another 30 seconds, then bolted from the car to the front door, locked the deadbolt, and went straight up to my room. That was decision number 1 I look back on now and shake my head at. I didn't wake my parents. It was so late and the whole thing felt so flimsy in the retelling. I saw a guy on a bench and got scared that I talked myself out of it. My bedroom's on the 2nd floor, street-facing window, and I have heavy blackout curtains I usually keep shut, but I'd left them open that morning for sunlight and just never closed them when I left for Priya's. I sat on the edge of my bed for a while, telling myself it had probably been a homeless man, even though I knew the last bus through our area runs at 11 p.m., not 1:30. Eventually, I got up to pull the curtains shut because the open window was bothering me more than I wanted to admit. That's when I heard the tapping. Soft, even, rhythmic. 3 taps, pause, 3 taps, coming from the glass. I want to be clear about the physics of this. My window is a full 2nd-story window, no balcony, no trellis, nothing to climb. There is genuinely no reason for sound to be coming from that glass. I didn't move for what felt like a long time. The tapping stopped and started again, and this time it had changed, slower, dragging, like fingernails being pulled across glass rather than tapped against it. I made myself look. I stepped to the side of the window and pulled back just the corner of the curtain, the way you do when you don't actually want to see something, but your body makes you check anyway. The figure from the bench was standing directly below my window on our front lawn, looking straight up. And the streetlight from our own porch caught its face just enough that I could see the skin was wrong, gray, almost ashen, with no real texture to it, and the eyes weren't reflecting any light at all, just 2 flat, dark hollows. It wasn't doing anything dramatic. It was just standing there, one gloved hand raised, one finger extended, pointing at my window like it was marking it. I don't remember deciding to move. I just remember being on the floor with my back against the bed frame, phone in my hand, dialing 911 with my thumb shaking so badly I had to redo it twice. The dispatcher kept asking me to describe what I was seeing, and I remember struggling to get full sentences out. I stayed on the line until I heard sirens, and when I finally worked up the nerve to look again, the lawn was empty. 2 officers walked the property with flashlights, checked the lawn for footprints, checked under my window for any sign of a ladder or marks in the dirt against the siding, even checked the garage and side gate to make sure nothing had been moved. There was nothing. No footprints in grass that had frost on it and should have shown something. No disturbed mulch under the window. One of the officers, not unkindly, suggested I might have been dreaming, half asleep after a long night of studying, and that exhaustion does strange things to people. I wanted to believe that. I really did. The next morning, my dad knocked on my door before I was even fully awake, asking if I knew anything about the window, because there was a mark on the outside of the glass he wanted to show me. I went out to the side yard and looked up, and there it was, a single deep scratch arcing across the lower pane, the kind of mark that would take real pressure to leave in tempered glass, starting right around where that pointing finger had been the night before. My dad assumed it was hail damage from a storm we'd had weeks, and I didn't think much of it. I didn't correct him. I never saw the bench occupied again after that, not once, not even on nights I deliberately stayed up late just to check, which I'm not proud of. We had a security system installed within the week, cameras on the front and side of the house, motion-activated lights covering the lawn under my window. The footage from those first few months never picked up anything, no figures, no movement that wasn't a raccoon or a neighbor's cat. I still leave the hallway light on every night, something my mom stopped commenting on because she knows better than to ask. And I don't look out that window after dark anymore, not even to check if a car is pulling into the driveway. I let the motion lights do that job now. It's been a few years and the bench is still there, the street lamps still flickering, and I still take the long way around the development sometimes just to avoid driving past it after midnight. I never found out what it was or why it pointed at my window specifically instead of anyone else's on that street. And that's the part that sits with me the most. Not that something was there, but that whatever it was seemed to be marking the house, marking me. I think about that scratch in the glass more than I'd like to admit, especially on nights when the wind picks up and something taps against the siding. And for half a second, before my brain catches up, I'm still 23 years old, frozen on the floor of my bedroom, watching a curtain like it's the only thing keeping something out. Two years ago, I took a 6-month internship downtown and moved out of my parents' place for the first time into a studio in a building that had clearly been something else 100 years before. A textile office, maybe, based on the old freight elevator nobody used. High ceilings, original wood floors that sloped slightly toward the windows, and doors so heavy and old that closing them sounded like a gunshot if you weren't careful. I loved it. I'm not a nervous person by nature. My mom used to say I could sleep through a fire alarm, which isn't actually a compliment, but I took it as one. I worked nights at a call center that handled overseas accounts, so my schedule was backwards from most people's, home by 1 a.m., asleep by 3, awake around noon. I liked the quiet of the building during my off hours. The laundry room in the basement and the little mail alcove by the entrance were basically never occupied when I came and went. It felt like having the whole place to myself. The first thing I noticed was small enough that I genuinely didn't think anything of it. I keep my keys on a hook by the door, always, out of habit drilled into me by my dad, who used to lose his constantly. One afternoon I woke up and they were sitting on my coffee table instead. I figured I'd been tired coming home from my shift and just set them down without thinking. A few days later, I came home to find the bathroom door shut, when I distinctly remembered leaving it open. I always leave it open. It's a tic. I don't even register doing it. I told my friend Marisol about it over text, and she said I was probably just sleep deprived from the night schedule, which, fair. I'd been telling myself the same thing. Then I found the towel. I came home from my shift around 1:30 a.m., and there was a towel draped over the back of my reading chair, damp with a faint ring of mud worked into the fabric. I don't own a towel like that. Mine are all the same set, white, from a bath bundle I bought when I moved in. This one was gray, threadbare at the edges. I live on the third floor of a building with no fire escape access to my window, and I checked my door locks that night with a flashlight. Every screw, every strike plate. Nothing was forced, nothing was scratched. It was like the door simply hadn't been touched. That was the first night I made what I now recognize as a genuinely bad call. Instead of telling the building manager right away or calling the police over a towel, I decided to test it myself. I bought a roll of Scotch tape and started running a thin strip across the seam of my door and frame every time I left for my shift, low near the handle where it wouldn't be obvious. Almost every single night, I'd come home around 1:30 and find that tape peeled cleanly away, sometimes still stuck to the frame in a curled little ribbon like someone had taken their time with it. Someone was getting into my apartment, walking around inside it, and leaving before I got home night after night, and they weren't taking anything. My laptop sat untouched. My jewelry, what little I had, was never disturbed. I started keeping my phone and wallet in my bag instead of on the counter, more out of superstition than logic, because somehow the idea that nothing had been stolen scared me more than if something had been. I finally went down to the building manager, a guy named Phil, who'd been running the place for something like 15 years. I explained the tape, the towel, the moved keys. He laughed, not meanly, just dismissively, the way you'd laugh at someone telling you their house settles at night. He told me the building was old, the locks were original to the 1960s renovation, and that doors in places like this have a mind of their own. He didn't offer to change the lock. He didn't even write anything down. I left his office feeling like I'd imagined the whole conversation. About 2 weeks after that, it stopped being subtle. I came home around 1:40 a.m. on a Thursday, and the television was on, tuned to static, the blue-gray snow flickering across the dark apartment, throwing light across the ceiling. The remote was on the floor near the couch, not on the coffee table where I always leave it, positioned like it had been set down by someone sitting in front of the screen. I stood in my doorway for a long time before I made myself walk in and turn it off. I didn't sleep that night. I sat up with every light in the apartment on, going through every excuse I could think of, a power surge, a faulty remote battery, anything, and none of them explained the remote on the floor, angled toward the couch like it had just been put down by someone's hand. That weekend, I ordered a small hidden camera online, the kind disguised as a phone charger, and set it up on a shelf across from my front door, angled to catch the entryway and most of the living room. I went to work Sunday night feeling almost calm for the first time in weeks, like I was finally doing something instead of just reacting. I came home at 1:30 a.m., and instead of going to bed, I sat at my kitchen table and plugged the SD card into my laptop. And I want to be honest, my hands were shaking before I'd even pressed play, like some part of me already knew. The timestamp read 3:04 a.m. My door, locked, dead-bolted, tape unbroken when I'd checked it that morning, opened without any visible forcing, just swung in like someone had a key. A man walked in wearing a dark hoodie, the hood down, and what struck me immediately was how unhurried he was. He didn't move like someone breaking in. He moved like someone coming home. He walked straight to my kitchen, opened the cabinet where I keep my glasses, which meant he knew where it was, filled one with water from the tap, and drank it standing at my counter. Then he walked into the center of the living room, turned and looked directly at the camera. Not scanning the room, not glancing around nervously, directly at the lens, like he knew exactly where it was, even though I'd hidden it well enough that I doubted myself while setting it up. He stood there for almost a full minute, completely still, with a small, satisfied kind of smile, before he turned and walked into my bedroom, out of frame, And the footage just continued running on an empty living room until the file cut off 20 minutes later. I didn't pack a bag. I didn't grab clothes or chargers or anything that wasn't immediately in arm's reach. I grabbed my cat Theo from where he was hiding under the bed. He'd been hiding under the bed a lot those past few weeks, now that I think back on it, which I'd chalked up to him just being a cat. And I grabbed my laptop and my keys, and I left. I sat in my car in the parking garage for 10 minutes before I could make myself drive, and then I checked into a hotel 2 miles away and didn't go back to that apartment, not once, not even to get my things. I paid a moving company to clear it out while I stayed somewhere else entirely. I gave the footage to the police, and a detective told me, almost offhand, that the locks in buildings that old often used a small number of master key variants that had circulated among maintenance staff and previous tenants for decades, sometimes copied without anyone tracking it. He said it explained the lack of forced entry, but it didn't explain how he knew the layout of my specific apartment, knew which cabinet held the glasses, knew exactly where I'd hidden a camera, that even I'd second-guessed. They ran the footage against known offenders and got nothing. The case is still technically open, which I'm told just means it's filed away somewhere, unsolved, waiting. I live in a gated complex now with a doorman in the lobby and a keypad deadbolt that requires a 6-digit code I change every month, a habit Marisol thinks is excessive and I think is the bare minimum. Theo still won't sleep anywhere, but pressed against me at night, which I used to think was sweet and now think might be him remembering something I can't. Most nights I'm fine. But every so often, lying in bed in a building I know is secure, I hear the specific click of a deadbolt turning over, that exact sound, and I have to lie there reminding myself that it's just the building settling, just a pipe, just my own door down the hall doing something ordinary. I tell myself I'm safe here. Some nights I even believe it.